The phone buzzed against the nightstand at 2:14 in the morning, and I knew before I answered it that something was wrong. A mother's voice at that hour never means good news. My hand found it in the dark. My daughter's name lit up the screen. "Dad." Just my name, whispered, like she was hiding in a closet. "Dad." She said no. She said no, and now I don't know what to do. I sat up. My wife stirred beside me. "Who said no, sweetheart?" "No to what?" There was a long pause, the kind filled with someone pressing a hand over their mouth to keep from crying out loud. "The hospital called an hour ago." "Mom, I need you to come. Please don't call her back. Please don't tell her you talked to me." I was already reaching for my shoes. "My name is Walter Hensley. I'm 63 years old, and for 31 years I built a commercial refrigeration company from a single-use truck and a $4,000 loan from my father-in-law into a business that, when I sold my majority stake 4 years ago, was valued at $6.2 million. I didn't sell because I wanted to retire. I sold because my daughter Claire was pregnant with her first child, and I wanted to be the kind of grandfather who showed up, not the kind who sent a card. Claire is 34. She married a good man named Daniel 8 years ago, and up until that phone call, I would have told you their marriage was solid. Daniel's mother, Patricia, was a different story. Patricia had never liked me, never liked my wife Eleanor, and made it clear from the engagement dinner forward that she considered our side of the family practical people. Her words, delivered with a smile that never touched her eyes. What I didn't know, standing in my driveway at 2:30 in the morning with my car keys shaking in my hand, was that Patricia had spent the last 4 months quietly maneuvering to take something from my daughter that was never hers to take. And she had almost gotten away with it. I got to the hospital at 3:05 a.m. Claire was in a hallway chair outside the NICU, still in the hospital gown, her four-pole beside her like a metal sentinel. Her son, my grandson, Theodore, 6 weeks early, was in an incubator 40 feet away, and she wasn't allowed to hold him. She told the hospital she has medical power of attorney, Claire whispered. Her hands were shaking around a styrofoam cup of water she wasn't drinking. "Dad, I never signed anything." "Daniel says I did. He says I signed something in March when I was still on bed rest medication, and I don't remember it. And now she's telling the doctors what treatments Theodore can and can't have." I looked through the glass. Patricia stood at the incubator in a cream-colored blazer, reading glasses perched on her nose, talking to a young resident with the clipped authority of someone used to being obeyed. She wasn't crying. She wasn't even looking at the baby. She was looking at a folder. Mrs. Hensley signed the consent form. I heard her say to the nurse, tapping the folder, "It's all documented. I have medical power of attorney for both mother and child during any incapacitation event. You can call our family attorney if there's a dispute." Our family attorney. Not Claire's. Hers. I walked in. Patricia looked up, smiled the smile she always used with me. Warm on the surface, cold underneath, like a lake in October. "Walter," she said, "this really isn't the time. Claire's a bit confused right now from the medication. It's completely understandable." Claire wasn't confused. I'd known my daughter for 34 years. She had never looked more clear-eyed and more terrified in her life. I didn't argue in that hallway. I've learned in 63 years that the loudest man in the room usually loses it. Instead, I asked the hospital's patient advocate, calmly, for a copy of the signed power of attorney form for our family's records. It took 2 days. When it arrived, I sat at my kitchen table with Eleanor and read it 3 times. The signature on line 14 read Claire M. Hensley Ford. My daughter's actual middle name is Anne. She has never in her life signed anything with an M. I called Daniel first, not Patricia. My son-in-law is not a bad man, but he is, I'd come to learn, a man who avoided his mother's temper the way you avoid a down power line. "Mom just wanted to help while Claire was under sedation," he said, voice tight. "She's a retired paralegal, Walter. She knows how to expedite these things during a medical emergency. It's a standard advance directive. It's not sinister, it's efficient. Standard advance directive. Expedite." The words came out of him too smoothly, like he'd rehearsed them or been fed them. I pretended to accept it. "That makes sense," I said. "Efficient is good. Thanks for explaining, son." 3 days later, Eleanor found something on the family shared cloud drive. A folder Claire had set up years ago for wedding photos that Patricia, it turned out, still had access to from helping plan the reception. Buried in it was a scanned document, an amended beneficiary form for a $340,000 life insurance policy Claire and Daniel held jointly, dated the same week as the hospital consent form. The new secondary beneficiary, behind Daniel, was not Claire's name. It was Patricia's. I called Daniel again. This time my voice was even calmer than before, which I've learned unsettles people more than shouting ever could. Daniel, why is your mother listed as secondary beneficiary on your life insurance policy instead of Claire's own parents or the trust for Theodore? The pause on the line was 4 full seconds. That's an old form. That's from before we had Theodore. Mom just never got removed. Insurance paperwork is a nightmare. You know how it is. An old form that was dated 11 days ago. The following Sunday, Eleanor and I came early to Claire's house to help with the baby, and Patricia's car was already in the driveway. We let ourselves in through the garage door quietly. Force of habit, we didn't want to wake anyone, and we heard voices in the kitchen before we were seen. Once the trust paperwork clears, none of this matters anyway. Patricia was saying to Daniel, her voice light, almost bored. Walter's too busy admiring his own reflection to read fine print. He built a business, not a law degree. By the time he figures out what contingent trustee means, Theodore's education fund will already be routed through my account for safekeeping. It's not stealing, Daniel. It's managing risk. Your father left me with nothing when he died, and I will not make that mistake twice. Daniel didn't argue with her. He just said, quietly, just don't let Claire find out yet. Eleanor's hand found mine in the dark of that garage doorway and squeezed hard enough to leave a mark. That night I couldn't sleep, so I did what I do best. I pulled numbers. I called an old friend, an estate attorney named Marcus Webb who I'd used for the business sale. I gave him what I had. The forged hospital signature, the insurance beneficiary change, the phrase contingent trustee. Marcus called back 2 days later, and his voice had lost its usual dry humor. Walter, he said, your grandson has a trust set up by Claire's late grandmother. $475,000, held until Theodore turns 25. Someone submitted paperwork 3 weeks ago requesting to add a co-trustee with independent disbursement authority. Guess whose name is on it? I already knew, but I let him say it anyway. Patricia Ford. And Walter, if this goes through, she doesn't need permission to withdraw. She just needs a documented family emergency. Which, given what just happened at that hospital, she's already building a paper trail for. I hung up the phone and I sat very still for a long time. My instinct, the instinct of a man who spent 31 years building something out of nothing, was to call Patricia myself and lay every document on the table and watch her face collapse. But I had built that company by knowing when to negotiate loud and when to negotiate silent. This was silent. So I decided to become, for a few weeks, exactly what Patricia already believed me to be, a proud old man who didn't understand paperwork. I started small. At the next family dinner, I let Eleanor read the menu to me and made a joke about needing new glasses. I asked Daniel, in front of Patricia, to explain that trust thing again, slower this time. All this legal talk makes my head spin. I let my shoulders round forward when I sat. Let my voice go a half step softer. Let a slight tremor creep into my hand when I reached for my coffee. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that would read as performance to anyone who wasn't looking for it. And Patricia was never looking for it. She saw exactly what she wanted to see. Poor Walter, she said to Eleanor one evening, not quietly enough. It happens to men like him. All that business success, and then one day the mind just starts to slip. Inside, I was doing the opposite of slipping. I was cataloging every date, every dollar figure, every document Marcus was quietly pulling together. But a wolf that thinks the sheep is asleep doesn't bother locking the gate. Marcus and I built the bait carefully. I had my own attorney draft a real, legitimate amendment to my own estate, a $1.8 million real estate holding I'd never mentioned to Patricia, naming Claire and Theodore as sole beneficiaries, with language deliberately loose enough to look, on a first read, exploitable. I left a folder with a printed draft of it on my kitchen counter one Sunday, accidentally, while Patricia was visiting to drop off a dish. I made sure to shuffle her toward the bathroom that faced the kitchen. Then I sat in the next room with my phone recording app running silently in my shirt pocket, the microphone hole facing out, my hands folded like an old man half asleep in his recliner. I heard her flip through the pages. I heard her take 3 photos with her phone. The camera shutter sound wasn't muted. That night, my phone buzzed under the dinner table while Eleanor and I sat with takeout, watching the numbers tick up on a shared document link I'd embedded in the file, a tracking pixel Marcus's paralegal had set up. Someone had opened that draft file 4 times in 6 hours from an unfamiliar IP address that resolved, when we checked, to a UPS store 2 miles from Patricia's house. The same UPS store with a public notary and fax service she used for official family paperwork. According to Daniel's own earlier excuse, she was building her play. All I had to do was let her. Claire and Daniel hosted Theodore's christening 7 weeks later. 40 guests, white tablecloths, Patricia in a new cream blazer, the same shade as the one from the hospital, I noticed, though I doubt she meant anything by it. Patricia raised her glass halfway through the meal. I just want to say, she began, that family means stepping up when others can't. Some of us build businesses. Some of us build families. When you're young and you're struggling, you find out very quickly who actually shows up, and who just writes checks and calls it love. A few uncomfortable laughs. Claire's face went white. Daniel stared at his plate. I only bring it up, Patricia continued, warming to her own cruelty, because I've had to step in more than once to protect this family's future, legally, financially, while certain people were busy admiring their own success. I don't need credit. I just think it's time everyone knew who's actually been managing things around here. I set down my fork. I didn't raise my voice. I never do. Since you brought it up, Patricia, let's talk about managing things. The room went quiet in that particular way rooms go quiet when they sense a shift in weather. On February 3rd, you told hospital staff you held medical power of attorney for my daughter. She never signed that document. Her middle name is Anne. Whoever forged that signature wrote M. Patricia's smile didn't move, but her eyes did. On March 11th, you had yourself added as secondary beneficiary on Daniel and Claire's joint life insurance policy, 11 days before you claimed the form was old. Walter, this is hardly the 6 weeks ago, you filed paperwork attempting to add yourself as co-trustee with independent disbursement rights on a $475,000 trust that belongs to a 6-week-old baby who cannot yet lift his own head. Gasps around the table now. Daniel's mother's own sister put a hand over her mouth. And 3 weeks ago, you photographed a fake estate draft I left out for you, the one you've since forwarded to your attorney. According to the email chain my lawyer received a copy of yesterday morning, attempting to leverage it as grounds to challenge my competency and seize guardianship influence over my grandson's finances. You set a trap for me, Patricia said, and for the first time her voice cracked from confidence into something uglier. I set a mirror, I said. You just couldn't help but look into it. I reached into my jacket and took out the folder, the real one, the one Marcus had prepared with copies of everything. The forged signature analysis from a handwriting expert, the beneficiary form dates, the trust filing, the recorded audio transcript, the tracked document access logs. I didn't slam it down. I set it in front of Daniel, gently, the way you'd hand someone something fragile. Then I picked up the champagne flute Patricia had raised in her toast, still half full, and I poured it slowly onto the floral centerpiece between us. Not thrown, not violent, just tipped, deliberate, final, a small ceremony ending a small war. That's for every no you gave my daughter at 2 a.m. when a baby's life was on the line, I said. You don't get to raise a glass to family loyalty at this table again. 2 men in plain clothes rose from a table near the door. Marcus had arranged, quietly, for a county fraud investigator to attend as a guest, given the forged signature on a hospital medical directive was itself a felony matter. They didn't cuff her at the christening. They didn't need to. They simply asked her to step outside for a conversation, and the color drained from her face as she walked out past 40 silent guests holding cloth napkins they'd forgotten they were still gripping. Within 6 weeks, the forged hospital directive triggered a state investigation into medical consent fraud, Patricia was charged with a Class D felony for forgery of a healthcare document and accepted a plea deal requiring 200 hours of community service and formal loss of any power of attorney rights within the family, permanently, by court order. The insurance company, alerted to the fraudulent beneficiary change, reversed it within 10 business days and referred the matter to their internal fraud unit, opening a parallel civil liability question. Patricia is still, as of this writing, paying legal fees to defend. The trust's court-appointed overseer denied the co-trustee petition outright and placed a permanent flag on the account requiring dual attorney sign-off for any future amendment request. A safeguard, Marcus tells me, is now used as a teaching example in his firm's estate seminars. Socially, the fallout was its own kind of sentence. Patricia's sister, the one with her hand over her mouth at the christening, stopped speaking to her within the month. The country club board, of which Patricia had been a long-standing member, quietly declined to renew her membership the following spring, citing conduct unbecoming, though everyone in that town knew exactly what conduct they meant. Daniel, to his credit, finally stood somewhere. He didn't defend his mother again. He sat Claire down, apologized for years of conflict avoidance that let this metastasize, and the two of them began family counseling, which they still attend. As for Grace, I made sure Patricia's longtime housekeeper, a woman named Rosa who'd worked for her 14 years and had nothing to do with any of this, wasn't left stranded when Patricia's finances constricted under legal fees. I quietly covered 3 months of Rosa's wages myself through an anonymous transfer while she found new clients, and I wrote her a reference letter under my own name. Some people in a burning house didn't set the fire. You still opened the door for them. It was raining the night Patricia showed up at our door, 11 weeks after the christening. No umbrella. A single duffel bag. Her cream blazer, the same one, now wrinkled and damp at the shoulders. "Walter," she said, and her voice had none of the polish left in it. "I have nowhere else. Daniel won't take my calls. My sister changed her number. I made mistakes. I know that now. Please, just until I get back on my feet." I stood in the doorway with the porch light behind me, Eleanor a few steps back in the hallway. "Patricia, I hope you rebuild something. I mean that honestly. But you tried to take a baby's future out from under him while he was 6 weeks old and couldn't lift his own head. There's no guest room in this house for that. I didn't raise my voice. I never do. I just closed the door, gently, the way you'd close a book you'd finally finished." Eleanor took my hand in the hallway. "You did the right thing," she said. "All of it. Every step." "I know," I said. "I just wish it hadn't cost so much to get there." "It cost her," Eleanor said. "Not us. Remember the difference." I did. I do. Here's what I learned. Sitting in that hospital hallway at 3 a.m. watching a woman decide my grandson's fate over paperwork she never had the right to touch. People who need to control your family's money will always dress it up as help. Real love doesn't need a signature you don't remember giving. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do isn't to fight loud. It's to go quiet, watch carefully, and let the truth do the talking when it finally arrives. If someone in your life has ever tried to manage your family for your own good, tell me about it in the comments. I read every one. And if this story meant something to you, hit like, subscribe to Calm Dad Stories, and I'll see you in the next one.